I watched this guidance video last night about, what makes a great TED talk, and one of the central things was a fresh idea, and I thought, oh, God, I'm not going to be able to do that today, so sorry in advance. Actually, I'm a very uncreative architect, and I really don't think there's another need for a designer chair or, I question the greatness of the latest sort of banking headquarter that's got 6 green stars, when in fact we're living and working in a city that's been designed in the last minutiae to segregate people, and we still haven't really overcome that, and it's a really worrying thing for me as an architect. And if you look at this image, and I know we've had very nice talks about Soweto and about Africa, and it's open for business, but this is how we are building Soweto, and in the foreground you can see what's being built right now, and I don't really see such a big difference. If we go to the north, the aspirational north, or any suburb around Joburg, we see this. And just imagine catching a taxi there. I mean, it doesn't feel right to do that in a democratic city in the face of this big smiling McDonald's sign and this casino in the background. And public space, which I think is a really important ingredient in cities that, you can contest the term democratic city, but let's just say in cities that work better for a bigger majority of people, public space is really important so that people can actually take part in the civic life of a city and meet each other. And that doesn't really do it for me. This I found incredibly threatening as a student when I graduated. And then I also found it incredibly intriguing because this is a system that's been created by people to overcome, the segregation of Johannesburg, and it's actually quite clever. And how are designers or architects or planners handling this? If you look at this image, it is, whilst the other picture is maybe a little bit scary or uncomfortable, this is quite beautiful to my eyes. And these are guys who make signage to repair exhaust pipes on the side of the road. And it's quite sophisticated in the way that you use the leftover of your business to build a sculpture every single day to advertise your business. And it's in a way the most fantastic evidence that art still serves a function. And it's beautiful. And none of these guys actually studied art. They didn't study design. So I'm getting a little bit dubious about having to study something. And then when you look at this, it's completely mind-blowing if you actually look what's going on here. Try and point. You can buy some lunch, various meals. You can also buy a house, 2-bedroom for 3,000 rand. Maybe now it's 4,000 rand, but that will be delivered in a day. And that really costs a tiny, tiny fraction of the state subsidy for formal housing. So why are we all paying money to build houses when people themselves can build those houses for much, much less? And maybe the question around this is, how do people get access to land? And then look at this. This is 200,000 strong city. It's Diepsloot. It's 50 kilometers north from here, and it was built, 75% of the city is built by ordinary people. Not by architects and planners, but what is important is the underlying structure. And if we talk about the underlying structure of Joburg as an apartheid construct, as a template we keep on fleshing out, then I think we really have to ask ourselves, what role are we playing in making the city fairer? So I'll show you 2 projects where we try to work with this in mind. And this is Diepsloot, in fact, and it's the main taxi rank, and we had to upgrade. One of our jobs was to upgrade the existing rank. And one of the typical Joburg requirements is, no, we have to secure this perimeter so people can't get in. You're like, what do they need to get in? And there was a whole lot of traders, 24 traders who were trading on the pavement on the main, this is the second block when you enter Diepsloot. And we thought, well, what if this is a public space and civic infrastructure which people need to be proud of and which they can take part in, what do we do? Can we make this fence like really big so it becomes something like a stoep? And can we, inside of that thickness, actually accommodate traders in a better way than merely handing them back their shelters when we're done with the fence? So we're very lucky to be able to work on this project, and the client listened to us in that way. This is the toilet block, the back of the toilet block, which we made as a public space where you can meet people on your way to catch a taxi. You can see the traders accommodated in formal stalls. You can see those pipes sticking out of chimneys because they're long power outages. That's the new entrance. They're very long power outages, and even although you have a pay-as-you-go electricity meter, it's really difficult. If your business depends on cooking meals for people at 4:30 in the morning when they get up to catch a taxi, you have to still cook. So we integrated those. You can see those gamblers were there before we even built the rank. So the last piece of this rank becomes more and more informal, and there's some opportunities for people to actually just inhabit this and start trading from it. And the last bit is also a bus stop. And now that people can lock up their goods safely, the businesses have also changed quite a bit. They offer different services. So like the lunch shop, you can buy a house, you can now get your cell phone repaired and have lunch. But you can also drop off your dirty washing and pick it back up on your way home. Ironed, starched, beautiful. So this is a lady who just changed her business into a laundry. And this building's not like neat, slick, clean. It's grimy, it smokes, it's busy, it's intensely used all the time. And there's also space for very, very important people who, have our lives in our hands, and the taxi mechanics, and they also need to find a place to work with dignity. But when you look at this building, this represents, in a sense, the big kit you need to make a place like Diepsloot, which is a young city. It's growing, it's 20 years old. It becomes more dignified, more habitable. You can use this public space to get in and out of Diepsloot. This theater is a wonderful place. You need it in cities that have to, in a sense, normalize. But when you look at the area around Diepsloot, and it's a sea of informal dwellings, you see another kind of challenge. And that is one of the challenges we also try to engage with. I hate it when people say we have to deal with informal settlements, deal with housing, deal with corruption, deal with that. How can you deal with it when you haven't even actually engaged with it? And I loved this previous speaker's 3 points where he said you need to actually stand somewhere else to look at this problem differently, and you need to behave in a different way to actually be able to engage. So we were invited. When I say we, apologize, Tati doesn't like it, but it's me and my wife, Anna Grapner. We run a practice. That's why it's not the royal we, not Shakespearean at all. Our practice was invited to run a course at the University of Johannesburg, and we were free to choose what we wanted to work on, and I chose informal settlement upgrading, based on this experience in Diepsloot, which really, really made me wonder, how are we growing our cities and how are we designing them? And does design even play a role in there when people can somehow do their own thing, and they do it much better than any professional who studied for 6 years with a degree, multiple qualifications, and who can waltz in somewhere and say, look, I'm the expert, you've got to listen to me. Or who just thinks it's all so complicated that they retreat back into academia. I want to be there and figure this stuff out. So we were very, very lucky. Now this we is about me and Alex Upper, who's a lecturer at UJ, to be invited through a network of amazing NGOs and community-based organizations who, in a sense, globally campaign for the rights of people living in slums and informal settlements. There's a big debate on what you should call these things, which I think is very boring. Like you can call them kinetic cities or spontaneous cities or aformal terrains. Doesn't really matter. There's still a shack. Well, in this case, it's a church, and that was our studio. We were invited in there for 7 weeks. And the point was that you cannot teach something in a classroom to a bunch of people who don't live in this context. You have to go and engage with the people who live in the context. It can tell you what it's like if you as a young girl have to, at 11 at night, walk 100 meters to the next toilet, past 2 shebeens, and there's no electricity, there's no public lighting. Now the students need to understand that, and so do the lecturers. So this is Reimagining. It's quite small. It's on the western periphery of Johannesburg. I don't know, can you see my pointer? Yeah? Okay, wow. I thought this was really clever technology. Thanks, guys. I like this interaction. You're engaging with me. So this was the church where we had the studio. We had to vacate on Sundays. Lucky students, we usually make them work on Sundays. And this is, believe it or not, a golf course. And this is in an area with gated communities and quarries, a really strange place. But the people who live here have been there since 1983, and they were part of building this, strange golfing utopia that people live in Reimagining. So the one thing, I must admit, that none of us knew what on earth we were doing. Like every morning, it's like, how could I put myself in this position? Is this so uncomfortable? I know absolutely nothing. And especially after, one of the community members said, so you're an architect, you studied, who do you think is the expert here? Have you ever stayed in an informal settlement? I said, no. He goes, okay. You listen to us. So what we managed to do was divide this class, who were fantastic young students, into 4 groups. Each group got 2 residents who volunteered to work with the students, who also lived in the settlement in the actual sector that the students worked on. And we made 2 deals. There are only 2 things we could do. Well, first there was one. Was to draw the settlement. Because after you've been told how useless you are, the one thing you can do is I can draw. So we said, okay, cool, we'll draw this place so you can actually get a sense of what's going on. And that was a very, very important tool. The other thing we did based on that drawing was then produce a map of how, and this was the brief, how people themselves could change that settlement and improve it in the next 3 to 6 months. Now, this is an example, so there's no power really. You can't run an angle grinder, so you can't cut sheeting. So that's what you think if you come from, I don't know, it's a suburb, a university, where you have an angle grinder. But meanwhile, while you're trying to figure out how to get power to site, there's a guy cutting the sheeting with a sharpened chisel and a hammer, and he's done it. So I think these things are incredible and incredibly important for people and professionals to engage with. So anyway, this is the map. It's called a reblocking map, and the main purpose of it is to say, let's keep as much as we can. Now, this is a bit ironic if you want to improve a place, but you also don't want to disrupt people's lives. But imagine you have there's no legal ownership, right? And if you have a vision, which the community had, and if you have a plan that's sensitively laid out, you can say, this is a road. If we make it 1 meter wider, we can get the ambulance down there. Now, that road is also where in the future you might get services, lights, sewage, and it's in a sense the first fix. But now as a professional, you can't rock up and go, hey guys, I looked at my drawing board, this road needs to be 1 meter wider, come, let's do it. You move that, you're going to get chased out. And then you're still lucky. So I can show you here, this is a very fantastic and exciting image of Albert and Watson, 2 community planners who came to the office with a model they built to try and figure out a really complicated piece of their settlement. And they asked us to draw it up for them because the next day they had a meeting with the government and they had to present their scheme because government was sort of proclaiming, or the city was proclaiming this as their pilot upgrading project. And here was Shamima, who I think is a wonderful young woman, represents the new generation of architect. And here's another generation of architect, which is a local resident, who's presenting, actually this was at the marking, the students' final work for them, with them. And that is really incredible. And that is something we can harness, but I have a fear that we've been educated away from seeing that. So we only see the dark cloud, you don't see the silver lining because you immediately pop up the umbrella or whip out your degree or go, this is my right. So what you see in this final image is the mayor of Paula Park, which is a small informal settlement in East London, in a workshop with a town planner from that city, with two engineers from the city, and with an architect. And now they're discussing how can the settlement be improved. So the engineer sees a road and he sees sewage. It must go away. You know, that's what it's for, and it must take the stormwater, take it away. The town planner says, oh no, here, the bus must come here, and the ambulance there, and the cars here, has to be this way. The architect sees it as public space. This is where kids are going to play, you know, with small houses, small yards. This is where neighbors are going to meet and greet each other. And this is the space in which the democratic life could unfold. So I don't think any of this is at all fresh or radical that I showed you, because this stuff gets done every day. Just the combinations and the shift in your mind to, thank you again, to say, I'm done. It's a shift in your mind that is new, and the combinations of working with various stakeholders as well as multidisciplines. So thank you very much. Yabonga.